You heard it here first. Off the record, on the QT, and very hush, hush.
He ain't gonna like that. Omar ain't got a doing time kind of disposition.
He's right. Ain't no rules said the dog can't play basketball.
For England, James? No, for me.
We never lost an American in space. We're sure as hell not gonna lose one on my watch.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to Duel of the Greats, Season 5. We're cruising right along here. It is week 2. For those of you that were with us last week, we had a knockdown, drag-out fight over what was better between Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. Batman and Robin took the prize. This week, and as a refresher as well for those who either you forgot from last week, or you just tuning into this episode because you didn't like the ones from last week, which is fine too. But this season, we've switched up the format just a little bit. We're doing years this time. So the year of 1995 versus the year of 1997. We have we pick movies, we see what they we try and find some that match up pretty well together. You know, obviously last week we had 2 Batman movies, so that worked out really well. And this week we have 2 movies that also work out really well. From 1995, we have The American President, starring Michael Douglas, Martin Sheen, Annette Bening, Michael J. Fox, directed by Rob Reiner, written by Aaron Sorkin. It's like just a whole list of just bangers of people involved with this movie. But then we turn over to 1997 and we have Wag the Dog, starring Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, Anne Heche, Ed Harris, directed by Mike Nichols and written by David Mamet. So we've got a... Steve, you had a weird look. Is that all right?
Was Ed Harris in it?
Wasn't he the who am I thinking of? He was the CIA guy? Was that not Ed Harris? Did I screw that up?
I don't know. I don't remember seeing Ed Harris in it, and I did just rewatch it. But, you know, my memory's not as good as it was.
Who am I thinking of?
We did just talk about Ed Harris in the pregame. You guys are missing out on fantastic conversations.
I don't see him. William H. Macy, not Ed Harris.
William H.
That's my bad. That's my bad.
I wanted to say William H. Macy, but I was like, I better double check. Like I watched it a few days ago.
Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking Ed Harris. I'm not sure on that. William H. Macy.
Harrelson,
my apologies.
Ed Harris. Woody Harrelson. I mean, yeah.
There you go. Yes.
People famously confuse Ed Harris and William H. Macy.
It's true. It's
true.
This is my Pelican Brief and White Squall moment.
Right.
Okay, so also Willie Nelson and a Dennis Leary sighting somehow. Willie Nelson, by the way,
I forgot about that.
Willie Nelson in the movie plays a very much Willie Nelson character that is not Willie Nelson. It was very strange.
A much more crass opportunist.
Yeah,
Willie Nelson.
Yeah. Named like Johnny or something like that. It was because I assumed when they saw him, I was like, oh, it's Willie Nelson. He plays a musical artist, or just having him play himself. But no, he was playing some. It was weird. But we can get into that later. Anyway, something that's actually kind of interesting is these 2 movies. Well, before we actually get into even the movies, there was this was a sort of encapsulated a moment here in time, especially the 90s, I think. Like, there've always been political movies, right? Going back to, like, All the King's Men back in the 40s. But it felt like the 90s. Maybe that's just because that's when I was growing up and I was paying more attention to it. But even when I look back, you know, through film history, it kind of feels like the 90s had the political movies sort of had a moment. You know, again, All the King's Men, Manchurian Candidate, All the President's Men, they've been peppered throughout film history. But in the 90s, like, you had these 2 movies sandwiched in between these 2 movies, and I believe it was 1996, I think, was Primary Colors.
I looked it up.
96 or 98.
In 97, or it was a year after.
It was 98. Okay, yeah. So 98, and then there was another movie,
My Fellow
Americans.
Yeah.
There was Dave, came out in the
Mm-hmm.
90s.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's a couple more that I'm probably forgetting. But I kind of wonder, like, was it because that was the Clinton administration, basically, when all these came out. Now, you could, something specifically like Primary Colors was definitely inspired by the Monica Lewinsky Clinton impeachment scandal, all that stuff. But or I guess I wasn't directly inspired by that so much as it was just Bill Clinton's past. But I almost wonder if that particular moment, that impeachment, because I mean that was the first impeachment we'd seen. I mean, definitely first of our generation that we'd ever seen. But I don't even know if like our parents. I guess there was the
No.
Nixon.
I mean,
thing.
Watergate, but he wasn't actually impeached.
He wasn't actually impeached. Yeah. So So yeah, that was the first kind of thing that we had seen, or that anybody had really seen. So I wonder if it was like a sort of heightened interest in political movies or whatever, and it just kind of they all started coming out. I mean, or do you think it was just kind of coincidence, or
I don't think it was coincidence. I do think that there was I feel like there was this moment in politics where Americans got very comfortable. Saturday Night Live premiered in the 70s. And then for the next couple decades, it kind of became sort of this comfortable thing to make fun of the presidency. And the idea of the office of the presidency had been diminished a little bit. And then 9/11 happens. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh shit, like it matters who the president is. Um, and I really see these movies, particularly, whether they were inspired or, directly or indirectly by the Clinton presidency, there just seems to be sort of this era of we can make fun of the president and make art about the president, and it's not as serious. We don't live in a serious time.
And go back to the end of the Cold War. We talked about this in other podcasts, and these great stakes that for the entire, the last two generations had been there. The U.S. fighting the communists, but this sword of Damocles hanging over everyone's head, and these major foreign, geopolitical issues, and then that ends, and so now what are we left with? Well, like you're saying, why don't we look inward a little bit?
yeah, and to your point too, Nate. Like, I mean, as on the campaign before Clinton was elected, he's on Letterman playing the saxophone, right?
Arsenio Hall. I just did a TikTok about it about a month ago.
Or was it Arsenio Hall where he played? Okay.
Crucially, actually, it was Arsenio Hall. It's a very important aspect of it.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I mean that's and that had a huge. That didn't win him the presidency. There were a number of things going on at that time that helped boost Clinton.
Definitely him, right?
And it endeared him to the American public. Like there were things like that really endeared him.
Nate, you froze for like 5 seconds there.
Yeah.
5 seconds.
Yeah,
God,
so
what
you
did
were
I
like
say?
very, very crucially.
Oh, okay.
Arsenio Hall, and
I'll pick it up. I'll pick it up. So it was the Arsenio Hall show, and it was very crucial because it was one of those moments where he was very much playing to like Black Americans. That's kind of why he did that. And it was also one of those moments that was, we don't really get this anymore, where it was like that. I mean, that didn't win him the presidency, but it very much endeared him to the American public in a way unlike anything we'd really ever seen up to that point. And it really did, again, kind of all this, these films where we're sort of making fun of the presidency. It really created this notion of Bill Clinton's just one of us. He's just this cool guy that plays the saxophone, and and I think that I don't want to say that Bill Clinton diminished the office of the presidency. That's not what I'm saying at all. I just think that culturally, in the zeitgeist, there was something there that we didn't take the presidency as serious. And to Steve's point, there just didn't seem to be that many large. The Cold War ended. This cloud of nuclear annihilation kind of dissipated over our heads, and we hadn't really faced the terrors, figuratively and literally, of what was to come in the next century. And so it didn't seem as important that like we could just kind of make fun of the president.
It's weird to think about that now, where you've got post Cold War, pre 9/11, this time of relative peace. Definitely not peacetime, in terms of like the world, but just for us growing up, like we never knew how good we had it, and it was this weird sort of time,
Yeah.
and yeah, it that was a very very interesting moment, and a lot of those, and I think too a lot of what these movies do, um, that is probably sort of was the events that both of you are talking about was kind of the impetus behind it. I'm guessing is that a lot of these movies are a little bit of a peek behind the curtain. When you look at Primary Colors, like I don't think many people knew how a campaign was actually run, what kind of stuff goes on, and what they talk about, and how they do it, the mechanics of it. Because you would generally think that's a pretty boring thing, probably, and then we find out, oh wait, it can actually not. It's actually not all that boring. And then, similarly with something like Dave, right? That was a comedy, but you saw the sort of behind the scenes of like what does the president's everyday life really consist of? What is that like? What is it like to be the president? And because so many people, just everyday people, probably think like, oh well, I could do that, or I could do a better job, whatever. And then this is a movie where it's like, okay, somebody gets put in there, and so and both these movies, as well as I'm sure we'll get into as we go further, but also a little bit more of that sort of just peek behind the curtain, look at what goes on, what are the dynamics of presidency, of politics, of media, all that kind of stuff. That was really, and another thing too. This is cable news really started to take off in the '90s, and that's a big aspect of media and how that plays into everything more than it ever was before.
It's a very
So
interesting chicken or the egg question, isn't it? Like,
yeah, that is
especially
very
when it
much so.
comes to the 24-hour news. Like, was the rise of CNN and freaking Fox News, were those all a response to a craving that the public had, or did our
Did it
did those kind
manufacture
of
the craving?
yeah.
It's a good question.
Oh man, it's
So
also
before,
impossible. Sorry, but
no,
just
go ahead.
if anybody's listening to this, of all the 5 people that are listening, if any of you are like under the age of 25 or 30, it is impossible how much to overstate the last 15 years of politics, how insane they are compared to like the 90s. Like
I
things
mean,
that would have sunk a presidency in the 90s happen like 5 times a day now.
I teach, people know in my other life, I teach middle school, and I've had middle schooler, and I teach journalism. So certainly we're talking about, current political things, just because it's the nature of what we're studying, and we read newspapers and things like that. And I've had students directly ask me, was that like, has the news, because we study the whole history of the news and television news and broadcast news. And they say, was the news always this crazy? And I say, I mean, really, truly, I think the honest to God answer is no. And I say, there were long stretches of my life as an adult, not like when I was a kid. There were long stretches of my adult life in which I did not think about the president of the United States for a couple weeks. Like
Mhm.
I would have gone through. There were long periods of time in Obama's presidency where it was not, and no one did. It was not part of the public consciousness that we were thinking about him, or worried about him, or worried about the safeguards that government has in place to keep Americans safe. We there was a period of time where we were not doing this every fucking day of our lives, and now it's
It's
every day of our
wild.
lives.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every day, every second.
Every second.
Yeah, it's rare to even go a few hours without thinking about it, let alone weeks. But yeah, I was the same way. And like when you talk about news difference, beyond the fact that there was sort of less of it, just in terms of the pure volume of network of news networks and things like that, there was definitely a different approach to news. And not only has it evolved since the 90s, but even more so in the last 10 years, and 10, 15 years specifically. But I mean, it was not uncommon at all to like turn on to CNN and in the cases where you would watch news and see no opinions. Imagine that. Just literally two people sitting at a desk like your local nightly news, you know? It's just they would just tell you what happened and maybe show you some things. Maybe they'd have a correspondent there to give a little insight. And that's like you cannot find that anymore. That does not exist on cable news. It's all a panel. They've got 5 people up there and they're yelling at each other. Maybe they're on different screens because they're on Zoom or they're over a circular table or something. And that's all that's, you know, quote unquote news, which none of it is actually news. It's talking about things. So it's a completely different dynamic, which actually is kind of a good segue into these movies because they both sort of are right at the sort of starting point of that. And you can see both movies sort of factor that aspect in to their approach and sort of makes both of these movies kind of a little bit ahead of their time, you could argue. So, I mean, with that, I think that's probably a good segue to just jump right in now after our 10-minute walk down memory lane about the 90s. So yeah, we can just go right in. So with that, then I will turn it over to our fair and esteemed Judge Shepard. Please usher us through this week's movies.
Steve is definitely frozen.
I wasn't sure if he was just
He's just so bored.
Frozen. I know. I was like, we lost him. We lost Steve. We actually did lose him, but
he's gone.
Completely gone. Let's see. Are you still here?
I'm gonna message him on the. I need to restart my PC. Not sure why it's being so weird. So he's restarting.
Oh, okay.
Well, there you go.
That was a pretty funny little still for him to get stuck on, though.
It really was.
He was asleep. Junior Caminero got hit by a pitch, broke his pinky.
Who did?
Junior Caminero, the All-Star game.
Oh, the All-Star game.
Hit by a pitch in the All-Star game.
What did you say, Nate?
I said hit by a pitch in the All-Star game. That's new. Steve, we threw it over to you and you weren't there.
I sent a message.
You left us high and dry on that one.
You were frozen, and the freeze frame, I swear to God, was this.
It was perfect.
And so it looked like you had fallen asleep, and we were like, Steve.
Dave, did we lose you? But then we did lose you.
All right. Sorry. What did you throw? What did you give to me?
We were going to start the debate, so we were kicking it over to you to decide who was going to go first.
Before you do that, Jeff, let's like re-record that and maybe do socials.
Okay, I will do that.
He's always reminding.
All right, bring it back in 5, 4.
By the
3.
way, sorry.
Oh,
just to let you guys know, I'm gonna flip it every week. I think, just so it's not Jeff or whoever's 95 always going first, or Nate, whoever it is. So yeah, Nate went first last time.
Correct.
All right, so Jeff, you'll go first.
Sounds good. All right, in 5, 4, 3. So, all right, I think that's a pretty good segue to dive right in. But before we really get into it, don't forget to follow us on all of the social medias. We are at Duel of the Greats anywhere except for TikTok, where we are at Duel Podcast. You can follow us on all those social medias. And then if you would like to email us, regale us with a story of how much Wag the Dog or the American President meant to you as movies, or just talk about how much you hated either of them or any of the movies we've talked about, please feel free to do so at Duel of the Greats. Well, that makes it seem like the ad is in there. It's not. It's just duelofthegreats@gmail.com. So you want to reach out to us, any of those are more than applicable to do that, and we will respond to you in kind. So, with that, I will turn it over to our esteemed judge. Steve, please usher us through this.
Hear ye, hear ye. Court is in session. All of you, shape up. I'd be a terrible judge. The power would go to my head. I'd probably throw a gavel at somebody. But all right, so we've got it. American President versus Wag the Dog, 1995 versus 1997. We're going to switch it up a little bit though, just for fairness' sake. So the first case tonight will actually be 1997. Wag the Dog. Take it away, Nathan. Right? Damn it! All right, back up.
I told you like 3 different times.
I know.
today.
I
It
keep
was
forgetting.
me.
All right. 5, 4, 3, 2. All right, so take it away, Jeff, with Wag the Dog.
All right. For my first point that I bring, may it please the court, I would like to talk about how Wag the Dog. So both these movies deal with a sort of a crisis, you could say, that happens to the president. Now, one is far worse and more nefarious than the other. Wag the Dog, obviously, the president is dealing with a sexual assault situation with an underage girl. And in The American President, the quote unquote scandal is just the president dating a woman when he's single and she's single, which there's nothing really scandalous about it, but it's the media and it was the 90s. So that oh my God, that seems so scandalous. But one thing that I do think with Wag the Dog that it takes a much more sort of piercing look at at how crises are handled within a presidential cabinet, a presidential cabinet's not the right word, but all the operatives that are around the president in trying to deal with this scandal. They never show the president except sort of kind of vaguely off screen or close by. They don't really focus on the president themselves like they do in The American President, which would be kind of silly to have that movie and not focus on the president. But when you look at how it's handled in The American President, not only is it a lesser in terms of less serious scandal, but it is it's done, and this is probably a criticism that you could pin on a lot of what Aaron Sorkin does, especially a lot of his political stuff. But I feel like there's a lot of almost wish fulfillment type things that go on in The American President. It provides a sort of maybe a charitable interpretation, might be an aspirational presentation of it. Whereas with Wag the Dog, you get a very realistic understanding of how these things work, and you really sort of get a feel for how some of these people that are involved are bad actors, and not in the sense of like acting in a movie. Bad actors as in people that have not good intentions, and they don't or no intentions at all and no morals, and they just go wherever the wind blows. Robert De Niro, his character in the movie, doesn't really care about anything, doesn't care about the good of the country, doesn't care about making sure Americans are safeguarded, that they have all the appropriate information they need. All he cares about is that he was called in to do a job, and he's going to do that job however that may be. And I think we've started to see quite a few more of those people become more known over the last decade or so in politics, and I think people are a little bit more aware of it. But I still think the especially the average American person who probably still doesn't pay all that much attention to politics would probably be stunned to find out how many people there are that are like that, that just don't care. And if you pay them money to do one thing, they will do it. And when you look at how sort of politics has evolved since these movies came out, there is you see more and more of how the impact of those people have really shaped American politics, have shaped how what we have our discourse, I mean, you see how Robert De Niro's character can so easily manipulate media and get the media to manipulate the public in order to get the point across that he wants. And you know, there's a little bit of that going on in the American president, and there's you do get an understanding of how the everyone around the president in that movie has to work together in order to try and handle the crises while also doing the daily job of running the country. But again, I think it's even though it is very good and very compelling in its own right, I do think that the sort of wish fulfillment factor makes it, when you look at Wag the Dog, it just that added element of it still handles it pretty lightly. It's technically a comedy, and there are some funny moments, but it definitely is a darker comedy and shows that it can still be a little lighthearted, which helps the movie for sure because there's some really heavy topics, but still allows to say, okay, this is genuinely how it works, and it can be kind of horrifying when you really look at it. And I think that is something that just as a movie puts it a little bit ahead of The American President, in my estimation.
All right, good start there. Any rebuttals?
I'm going to let my rebuttal on that sit because it kind of is one of the points that I want to make about my film. So I don't disagree with anything Jeff is saying. I think there's a larger point maybe to be had about kind of the political attitudes of the time, but I will let Mr. Jeff continue.
Are we gonna go? We're gonna do all three, and then switch. Or are we switching one?
I believe that's how we did it last week.
I honestly can't remember how we did it last week, but all three.
Brandon, do you remember?
Last week we alternated.
Did we?
It doesn't matter to me which way we do it.
Well, let's
in the past we've always done one film and then the other. Did we just screw it up last week because we were all together?
Maybe we did do all one film and then the other.
Steve, you're the judge. I'm gonna let you make the judgment on this.
We could switch it up. We could switch it up week to week if we want. It's our show. We'll do what we want.
That's true.
We make the rules around here.
It feels right. There's a truth to this. To just go ahead and say, Jeff, continue.
Okay.
Lay out your case.
Continue, I shall. All right. For my second point, I think that the relationship and the banter between Robert De Niro and Dustin Hoffman, just narrowly, mind you, but I do think it beats the relationship dynamic between Michael Douglas and Martin Sheen in The American President. Now, beyond the fact that, I mean, basically all four of those actors are legends in the industry, but I mean, Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman are titans, and 4 Oscars between the two of them. And one of the things that it's kind of weird too, because when you look at Dustin Hoffman, you look at his role and how he played it in Wag the Dog, you kind of see that you're like, this is a classic Dustin Hoffman role, right? It's very similar to the character he portrayed in Meet the Fockers and some other sort of characters that he's played later in his career. Excuse me. But at the time, that type of character was slightly against type for him, and he hadn't sort of fully transitioned into that part of his career yet. So, this was kind of one of the transitions there. And Robert De Niro at this time was also trying, because he'd made his career. I mean, we talked. I mean, shoot, how many De Niro movies did we discuss in season 2 with Scorsese versus Spike Lee season, right? And
he's maybe he and Denzel, just because of Spike Lee, like they're our most covered actors. We've done a lot with them.
Easily, yeah. And he, but he made his money figuratively and literally, up to that point by basically, being the tough guy for the most part. And so even though he was a guy in charge, he was also kind of like goofy and eccentric and a little bit different than, Jake LaMotta from Raging Bull or I'm blanking on his character's name from Goodfellas, but um, it was slightly a little bit different for him in those. And I think both of those actors doing something that was a little bit different for them at the time and the way they meshed and bounced off each other, I mean, that was I thought it was just a fantastic little dynamic. And I wanted more of it because there was, points in time where Robert De Niro and Anne Heche, they were working together. They were off doing something, trying to figure, some other problem out. And then Dustin Hoffman was over trying to film something because he's the film producer. Uh, and every time I would see him, I'd be like, man, I want those two together because they're so funny together. And you could tell they seem to really enjoy. I don't know if they actually did, but it sort of felt like they enjoyed acting together. And so, I thought that was just a really good little dynamic that they had. And I think there were, points where the movie could have dragged or could have dipped or maybe gotten too dark. And because of the way they played it and their dynamic for their relationship, I think it kind of stopped the movie from going into those two dark places, which was good and needed to happen because there were some points where it's like, whoa, this feels a little discordant with the overall sort of tone of the movie, but they were always there to pull it back. And so I think that dynamic really helped the movie and elevated it more so than say the Michael Douglas Martin Sheen dynamic in The American President.
Any rebuttals, sir?
That's, again, I don't want to step on my own points too much. I think that's going to come down to a little bit of personal preference. I probably will just let that one sit and just discuss it on my points when we get to it.
Well, you guys aren't any fun tonight. All right. Point number 3, Jeffrey.
For my final point, I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier in my first point, but I think with Wag the Dog, it was very much ahead of its time in terms of how it understood media and how it understood the power of media when trying to for lack of a better term, but probably the most honest term, to manipulate the American public, right? I mean, there were so many funny times where there was, like when Robert De Niro shows up and they're talking with Anne Heche and he's trying to figure out what to do. And he's like, the war with Albania. And she's like, well, there's no war with Albania. He's like, you're trying to tell me there's no war with Albania? And, they just go back and forth and he totally flips the conversation every time. And then they get to the point where he's dealing with the CIA agent played by William H. Macy, as I've always known. But when he's in there and William H. Macy is trying to be like, what the hell are you doing? There's no war in Albania. And we all know, the Albanians know there's no war. And then there's this long diatribe that De Niro goes on where he not only completely flips the script, but then calls into question how good. He's like, you're telling me you're the CIA and you don't even know there's a war now? What are we paying you for? What are you doing? And it, like, a little side note here. So I mentioned at the top of the show, both the writers of these movies, okay, Aaron Sorkin for The American President and David Mamet for Wag the Dog. And both of those writers are both very outspoken politically, and they are on opposite sides of the aisle here. So it's very interesting to me to see Wag the Dog written by David Mamet, who definitely leans more conservative, and to see how much he leans into and how much he knows about this, about how to use the media to manipulate the American public, whereas there is a much more sort of earnest, forthright approach to how the media is used in the American president. And I don't think that that's bad, to be clear. I just think, this is kind of as a side note, I just think it's very interesting to illustrate those differences there. But, it also makes sense, though, because then, we have, and there's always been this historical, there's a liberal bias in the media. And whether that's true or not, there has definitely been the last decade plus, the conservative side has really shown that they are better at understanding, and using the media to their advantage. And I think that's part of where Wag the Dog was really ahead of its time in showing how that can happen and how you can manipulate conversations and discourse. Like the way that Robert De Niro was having that scene, every single right wing, YouTuber or debate me type person, they all argue that way. And this is a sort of there have been people that have found it and stuff. They send out in these different circles that they're in. They send out these different ways to this is how you argue with a liberal and things like that. Like they send out newsletters on this. So this is something that's sort of been gestating for decades in those circles. And I found it really interesting how Wag the Dog really sort of was kind of like, hey, I don't know if it was intentionally to say this is a warning, but it definitely should have been seen as a warning of how this can be used, how the media can be manipulated and then be used to manipulate the American public. With that being a big aspect of the movie, I think that really puts it a step above the American president, which again, it was not bad the way it handled how the media interacts with politics, but I just don't think that it went into it at the same level as Wag the Dog did.
They were two very different films in terms of their approach to politics and government. I'll give you that. I didn't know that about David Mamet, that he was a right.
Yeah, it's pretty disappointing.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. All right. Nathan, would you care if you have a rebuttal? Feel free. Otherwise, you may proceed, counselor.
I'm gonna kind of jump right in with my main point, and we've sort of danced around it a little bit, and I think it's Steve, our judge. This is going to be up to you. You just said something really interesting. So I had never.
He's already trying to butter me up.
Yeah, as I do.
Your infinite wisdom, Mr. Shepard.
I had never seen Wag the Dog, so I watched it for the first time. I'd seen The American President many times, and I'm a big. This will probably come out in my arguments, but I'm a big West Wing aficionado, and this movie had a lot of was very much a precursor to the television show The West Wing. For you, Steve, the judge, these movies are very different. In some ways, I don't think that they can really be judged against one another on their film merits. This, to me, this week, I've thought more about how I'm going to say this week than most weeks we've done this. To me, Steve, this is going to be about not what your political ideology is, but what your political attitude is at this moment in time. We live in a really cynical time politically, and rightfully so. We live in a time when people of all political spectrums have an immense distrust of the government and what government's purposes and what all the way down to literally what the purpose of this country is and what the idea of this country is. What these movies are basically asking you, movies both that were made in the 90s, made during our childhood, these movies are kind of asking you, are you going to be cynical? And that's okay if that's the answer. Or do you believe that there's still some hope that government can be a place for good where people come together with the right principles and the right state of mind to enact change. And that's what the American president is. And that's very much the attitude of Aaron Sorkin. Again, I just said this was a precursor to The West Wing. The West Wing was very much, I mean, for people who grew up like myself watching The West Wing, it kind of invented my entire political ideology of what I think about of government and how it can be used. So with that said, I'll kind of jump in on my points, but I don't think they matter. I mean, I'm just going to come right out and say, like, I don't think they matter. I think the movies are judged more about like what you're feeling right now, and I don't even fault you for whatever you pick. I will start by saying this though, from a filmmaking perspective. This film was directed by Rob Reiner. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first Rob Reiner film that we have discussed on our show. Certainly not the first 2 seasons. And I don't think that we hit any Reiner films in 3 or 4.
That's right. That sounds right.
And the reason I'm pretty sure of that is because I did not get to make this point about Rob Reiner. I think we all know that Rob Reiner is a master filmmaker. He has made some of the greatest films of all time in wildly different genres. I mean, to say, you know, people talk about The Princess Bride is kind of like this fun family fantasy film, and Stand By Me, which is this coming of age film, and A Few Good Men. I mean, these are like the pinnacle of those genres. What I will say about The American President is a perfect showcase of what Rob Reiner does so well as a director. That on this show, we talk a lot about different directors and what they do and how flashy they can be. The genius of Rob Reiner, this is, I think, why he was such a brilliant filmmaker, is he got out of the way. He is the greatest invisible director of all time. The greatest, and I'll say that again, he's the greatest invisible director of all time. That the reason he was able to do all of these pieces in these wildly different genres is because he knew to let the actors' performances speak and for the screenplay to speak and for him to just show it. It's really interesting when you look at, like, from an actual filmmaking perspective, the, you know, sort of the mise en scène, that he really just there's like a lot of wide shots, there's a lot of medium shots. He really only goes to like hard close-ups when you know, like at the end when the president's given the speech, which I'll talk about here in a moment. But I think it just, if nothing else from a filmmaking perspective, I think, because we've never talked about him, my first point is that this is a really great example of Rob Reiner and the genius of his direction and how he would get out of the way of performances and the screenplay and let those things evolve on screen. It's why he was able to make these very genre pieces so successfully. And I think The American President is absolutely one of them.
But out strong. Jeff, do you have any counter?
Just to as an aside, just to kind of further your point about Rob Reiner, just because I have some of the deepest respect for him as a director. You know, unfortunately, as I'm sure many people know, he tragically died last year. So, you know, we'll never see anything from him again, and that's very sad. But I mean, and I've seen other people talk about this as well, but like, you could put the 10-year stretch, 11-year stretch, or 10 movie stretch, I guess maybe as well, from like 1984 to 1995 up against just about anybody. And I mean, because this is Spinal Tap, The Sure Thing, Stand By Me, The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men, North, and The American President. I mean, North was a miss, but every single other one of those movies, I haven't seen The Sure Thing, so that I'm not sure on. But then every other one I mentioned are just classics and very defining movies for very many people. So
and defining movies, When Harry Met Sally, maybe the greatest romantic comedy of all time.
Yeah.
Stand By Me, one of the greatest coming of age movies of all time. Misery, like, along with probably Shawshank Redemption, the best Stephen King adaptation ever committed to film. I mean, again,
or Stand By Me. I mean, that's
Stand By
King
Me
adaptation.
I mean, like, oh yeah, I forgot King wrote Stand By Me. There are just so the way he was able to do this, and again, the American President is just a perfect example of this. Is there's something about the quality of his filmmaking that we look at directors in this very auteur theory, like they put their stamp on it, and that's fine. Obviously I don't have any problem with like a Martin Scorsese doing that, but I think the genius of Rob Reiner was that he really let the film and the power of the film and the story and the actors speak for themselves, and he didn't put a stamp on it. And I think that's really a lot of his genius.
Yeah, and I'll say to that he knows how to stay out of the way, but he also knew probably when to get in the way. Because there have been times where we've seen Aaron Sorkin because Aaron Sorkin wrote Few Good Men as well, and there are times
Mhm.
we've seen Aaron Sorkin sort of left to his own devices without a director that would say no to him, or he is the director and the movies are much different, but when you have someone like I think Rob Reiner knew when to insert himself, not necessarily leave his stamp on it, but just when to insert himself and say, you know what, let's tone this down a little bit, or we can go different direction, etc. And to your point, Few Good Men, The American President, they feel sort of like Aaron Sorkin movies, but not to a negative degree, which can happen. And then
Well,
something like
the four of us, before we started the season, were talking. We were texting about this one day. I mean, not to, and again, I love Aaron Sorkin, but we all watched the trailer for the new film, The Social Reckoning. And I just I came right out via text to you guys, and I was like, I think this is the worst trailer ever made. I mean, I'm not
Yeah.
saying that about the movie, but like, this looks legitimately bad. And I hate to say this, but I feel like part of the reason that is because it's Sorkin unrestrained. And it feels almost like a parody of itself before the movie's even out. And so, yeah, and there's many other examples of that, I think.
I mean, just you talk about the West Wing, which I've also liked the West Wing, and it's very good. But then the Newsroom, right? That's a sort of another example of blank check Sorkin. Oh, that's maybe a little bit too much. A little too much Sorkin. Never go full Sorkin.
I really, you never go full Sorkin. I love the Newsroom, but definitely by the third season, having people come into that communal area just screaming at each other, that's a great example of Aaron Sorkin. It's just like, people don't talk to each other like this in a workplace. Like, they just don't.
No.
And it's like, bro, like, how many times are you going to go to this thing where it's just like, and then finally, spoiler for the Newsroom, like, one of the guys has a heart attack. Like, it actually kills him. Like, one of the characters literally comes in screaming one day and he dies. He has a heart attack. It's just like, I guess that's how far you had to push it. They had to kill one of your characters. That's how much you were leaning on that trope.
Yeah. I'm not even sure. I got distracted by the Rob Reiner of it all, but I'm not even sure that I remember your exact first point. But I think it was about
his first point was Rob
cynicism
Reiner.
versus
Robert, that's my
His
first point.
overall
Rob Reiner.
was
So yeah, I mean,
cynicism versus optimism. Yeah.
I have very little to rebut in terms of Rob Reiner because I love so many of his movies, including The American President. So yeah, I'll let you go on to your next point. We've gushed enough about Rob Reiner.
Whoa. I'll let him go on to his next point.
I will let the
Don't be stepping on my
next.
toes here, my robe, sir. You may proceed, counselor.
Okay. It's like, you may now proceed. Again, I think this is kind of a preference. Jeff sort of brought this point up with his own movie. I think the supporting cast in The American President is absolutely stellar. And I definitely, in rewatching it, it had been a long time since I'd seen The American President. I really did not appreciate it fully until I rewatched it this time around. Annette Bening is always amazing. Had to look up. She's never won an Academy Award. 5 times nominated. Lost every single time. The Martin Sheen character as the chief of staff. Again, that's a little bit fun for me because then he's later the president in the West Wing. But I think he's fantastic. it's really fun, and this is perhaps a little bit more of a generational thing. Um, you can kind of be reminded sometimes of how really skilled of an actor Michael J. Fox is. Um, I think that we associate him now so closely with Back to the Future, and and for what he would want, by his own admission, his battle with Parkinson's disease and the work that he has done with the Michael J. Fox Foundation, which he considers the most important work of his life. So I'm not you know speaking out of turn. He wants to be known for that, but I think that we kind of look at him now sort of in that light, as this person who's kind of been ravaged by this really horrible disease that he's brought so much awareness to the world of. It's nice to see him in a role where it's like it's not Back to the Future. It's kind of before he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's, but it was before the Parkinson's really started to take over with sort of the physical ailments that the disease does. And I think he's great in it. And I just think there's so many. The Richard Dreyfuss character is just pure evil, and he's fantastic as well. And so I love even I didn't even look her up. The girl playing the daughter I think is fantastic, and it's just really it's everybody's acting in a very kind of well measured way. And again, I think it's sort of a Rob Reiner thing of how he's sort of directing them, but at the same time kind of stepping back. But for me, the supporting cast, and again, I know Jeff kind of made that as one of his own points as well. Um, I think the supporting cast in The American President is a little bit superior, kind of with what they're doing. But again, Steve, I'll let you, you're the judge. I'll let you, that's more of a preference thing. I don't know if one is necessarily even better than the other. But I think the supporting cast in this movie is great.
Rebuttal?
Yeah, I can't really disagree with that. I mean, Michael J. Fox in particular, like, and I think we mentioned last week how The American President was a big like TNT movie growing up, and it was always on, and when we'd watch it, we'd always be like, oh, he's about to do the speech, like Michael J. Fox speech, because he has a moment, where he's arguing with the president and he's talking about, oh, they're gonna go through what they're gonna go through the desert and they're so thirsty they'll drink the sand and all that, and like that interaction. I mean, for all of Aaron Sorkin's faults, it's hard to write scenes like that, and very few people do them better than he does. Um, and I would agree. I do have a rebuttal to your point. I would agree that the cast as a whole might be stronger just because it's bigger and with stronger. I don't even know the name of the actor, but the guy who with the glasses, God, he's basically the precursor to Toby in the West Wing. But God, I don't know what that actor's name was, but like he's fantastic in it. And also another thing we forgot at the top, talking about
It's Joshua Malina.
there you go.
Is that who you're
No,
thinking
no,
of?
no, 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 no. The guy when he slams the phone down and
Kodak?
he's
David
like,
Paymer?
was that a
Yeah.
no?
Is it Paymer? Yeah.
Okay, yeah,
David Paymer. Yeah.
David Paymer. That's okay.
The
Yeah, like
deputy
he
chief
was
of yeah, the
fantastic.
deputy chief of staff, yeah.
And another thing we forgot to mention at the top of the show too, we're talking about the political moment. This was also around the time that Michael J. Fox goes on Spin City, right? Which is another, it's a little bit smaller scale because it's about a mayor.
So I
But
didn't know when I was kind of just, Wikipediaing and stuff, they Spin City happened because of this movie. That they
oh, I
liked
didn't
this
know that either.
character. They liked this character so much. And Michael J. Fox has an extensive television background, and that was actually,
Yeah.
other than Back to the Future, he did a lot of TV, and of course Family Ties and all that stuff. And they like I forget what network Spin City was on, but basically the network came to him and was
ABC,
like,
I think.
"Hey, yeah, ABC was like, "Hey, we want to, we want to develop a character that's kind of like this character that you did in The American President," and that's how the show came about.
And I'm pretty sure that show, similar to Aaron Sorkin, was sort of more TV royalty because I think that was a Bill Lawrence show. Bill Lawrence, the creator of Scrubs
I think
and
so.
Shrinking. So yeah, kind of interesting, all these little connections that happen. But as far as my rebuttal is concerned, I think the point that I was making was just about the dynamic between De Niro and Hoffman and how that helped the movie. Whereas the dynamic between the cast, all the cast members in The American President was very good, but because there was a larger cast, it's a bit more spread out, and so we didn't necessarily get the same. It was just a little bit thinner for each one, for how all the characters interacted with each other. So that's what I felt. Wag the Dog was a little bit better in that regard.
All right. Well, you guys touched on a lot of the questions I had. So
Was that all your points? I thought you only did 2 points.
I get one more point.
Yeah,
Your
you
Honor,
get one more point.
if it
you know
pleases
what?
the court.
Objection.
I'm gonna let you.
I'll allow it. No, my final point was it was actually going to kind of, yeah, okay. My final point was actually going to come back around kind of to the initial point that I was making, just sort of about political attitudes. And it is the speech, the Michael Douglas speech at the end, which is this great, rousing speech. And again, it's crazy because when you watch that scene, it's like, it's just a pipe dream, right? Like it's not, none of those things are possible. Like the massive, the things he's talking about in like 20% reduction in like climate emissions and stuff, like crazy shit. That we could have never imagined. At one point in the speech, I forgot about it because he talks about like this massive gun safety reform, and he actually uses the phrase "we're going to get the guns," and it's just like, my God, like if a Democratic president said that ever, that would, I mean, it would have ended their presidency. I mean, it's just the notion of how we have to tiptoe around these issues. But again, I think that the fact that speech is in the movie, I think it just kind of speaks to, and again, this is kind of what I'll ask Steve, the judge, is, what kind of government in this country do you believe in? And again, I'm not faulting anyone for being I'm filled with cynicism most of the time. But what Aaron Sorkin does a lot with his writing, particularly in this movie and in The West Wing, is he asks us to. I think it's important to have artists who ask us, even if it's not real, even if it's completely unrealistic, to at least imagine a government in this country that is genuinely filled with good and the brightest people, and people who are unafraid to seek help and listen to advisors smarter than them, and to truly make the decisions that will have the greatest effect on American lives. And so I think the speech is very symbolic of that, and I think it's very symbolic of the choice that you have to make tonight of, what are you going to, how do you feel right now, about this country? And again, I totally respect, it's really not about the movies for me tonight. I totally respect whichever way you go, just because I think it's hard to watch this movie now, and it's why I have this love-hate relationship with The West Wing, because I love it, and I love going back and watching it. It's my favorite show of all time, but there's moments in it that are, where you see these characters who are filled with just this profound sense of purpose and good that they want to put into the world, and you look to our government now and you don't see that at all. It's completely fiction. So kind of a downer way to end that point, but Steve, I'll pass it on to you, and kind of curious to hear your thoughts, honestly.
If I may, sure. A small rebuttal for the final point.
Sure.
That, I think obviously the decision is up to you, of course. And, I think that's an interesting way to frame it, of, how you feel about government currently. I also think from a movie standpoint, I think The American President is a gripping movie emotionally. And I think Wag the Dog is a gripping movie mentally. And so I think there is also another sort of avenue of exploration of, what, obviously it's what you like better, but yeah, that's pretty much all I had.
I think that's probably a fair assessment. Um, interesting arguments all around. Nate, I obviously we know each other pretty well, so I know a lot of what you said there is heartfelt, but I also can't help but wondering how much of that is a calculated tactic to appeal to the better angels of our nature. My nature in particular, my sense of right and wrong and where we're headed.
I did say that this was about the hardest that I thought a long time about how I was going to articulate this stuff. So you read into whatever you want to, cousin, but I'm going with what I'm going with.
So I have made a decision. Believe it or not, I'm not basing this on that weirdly, like, so optimistic that it's almost cynical appeal to my my nature and what I believe. I'm not basing it on that, but I am going to go with the American president. And I do this mostly because, despite what you mentioned, kind of in one of your first points, Nate, I do think it probably is just a better movie. It's a more cohesive movie. It's more. It has a plot that it sticks with, and everything is in service to that plot and those characters. Whereas Wag the Dog, to me, felt like, when they do ad lib or improv classes, one of the techniques, one of the things that you're taught is the yes and. You guys familiar with the yes and? Wag the Dog felt like yes and to me. Like there was a premise for, hey, what if we got these guys that could make a fake war to distract from this presidential scandal, and then just it was yes and when it fully jumped the shark, to use another cliche, was the plane crash. These people are just involved in a plane crash with the this is another reason, the completely underutilized Woody Harrelson. And things just, the stakes didn't really escalate. The stakes were high the whole time. But it was like, what other strange, wacky situations can we put these people in? And it didn't strike a tone that there was no real central plot, with the exception of the overarching idea, right? I'm sure you could probably pick some holes in that, but the American president is very true to what it is. Gosh dang it. I don't want to talk about truth with you guys. That was our big bugaboo last season. What is it? What truth can speak to you? But it has a very clear plot. In fact, apparently it was pitched as The President Elopes. And that's how Aaron Sorkin was selling it around town. And everything it does is in service to the idea of what happens if this idealistic president, if his personal life comes up against his political life. So that's, in a nutshell, why I'm going with the American president. I also think, Jeff, there was one part that you didn't mention that I don't know if it would have changed my analysis if you had brought it up, but I do think you left it on the table. At the very, very end of Wag the Dog, do you remember what happens? You probably, if you've seen it recently, or if you haven't seen it recently, you might not remember. But
yes, I mean, I don't know exactly what you're referencing, but
it's literally the last few words of the movie. It's
where they talk about Dustin Hoffman getting.
It's after that. So it's that same vibe, though. It's like a news report. And so you talk about Dustin Hoffman, his character Motz has been found with a heart attack, and we know he's been killed by the CIA or FBI or NSA, one of the alphabet agencies. And then like one of the next thing they say at the very end is, in other news, an Albanian terrorist organization has
claimed.
And so I think we're meant to read into that this fake war has created blowback that is leading to real
bodies. It is real,
for innocent people, not just
I think that's the reading. Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's a more cynical take that maybe Robert De Niro's out there even extending the con, but I don't think that's what we're meant to think. I think it is the former. My point is, there's an interesting through line there with kind of what we talked about at the very beginning of this episode. Cause and effect, chicken or the egg, is the media and their ability to twist and manipulate things. Are they causing? I'm not trying to paint the media as bad, but you know what I mean. The political machine. I'm not singling out the media, rather. Do they help?
He's gone again. We lose him. He's gone. I think Brandon's actually asleep.
Not you, Brandon. Steve. I think we lost him.
We lost him.
He was blaming the media. I think he just got killed.
He might have. He might have gotten Dustin Hoffman.
That was a suspicious moment there. You know what? That's okay, because it gives me a moment to test something out. Steve?
What are you testing?
I'm trying to get this. Months ago for my daughter's birthday, Super Kids Club gave us this video of stuff like from her birthday, like them bringing in the birthday cake and stuff. And it's on this weird, it's USB, but it's like, it doesn't pull out. Like it's a little, I don't know if you can see it, like it's a USB input there. I'm trying to figure out like what I could even connect this to get this video off. Because it doesn't like it won't plug in. Like it's not a USB plug. Like I can't plug a USB into it. I don't think. No. So I don't know if like that needs to be pulled out or what. I'm trying to do here.
It probably is retractable, but it's for kids, so it's
like stuck, right?
Right.
That's what I'm thinking too. So I gotta like pull it out with something. Steve sent a photo.
Oh, jeez.
Uh-oh. Oh, God, this isn't good. Your device ran into a problem and needs to restart.
An update.
Well, should we try and wait for him, or should we just say we lost him and end it?
I say we lost him and end it. He picked.
Yeah, I'll bring us back.
So I would just like count us out and be like, so while we were recording that, we did lose Steve and he was having some technical issues, but we made our pick and just talk about next week and move on.
Yeah. Sounds good. All right. In 5, 4, 3. All right, everyone. So sorry about that, but we actually lost our fair judge, Steve. He has some technical difficulties. His computer just had to randomly restart. So unfortunately, we lost him, but that's okay. We're going to finish up without him. And he already made his pick anyway, so we know the American president wins. And we will continue to march on with season 5 of Duel of the Greats next week. We've got a banger, literally and figuratively, for both these movies here. The 1995 movie that Nate will be discussing is Crimson Tide, and the 1997 movie that I will be discussing is Con Air. Two very, very 90s, very, very action
90s.
movies. So this will be interesting. I have never actually seen. I don't think I've seen either of these movies the full way through. They're definitely big, like cable movies and stuff.
I think I have the exact same experience. I have the exact same experience where it's like,
and I can definitely remember stuff, but
particularly Con Air. Like
I don't watched it.
Particularly Con Air, I didn't have no memory of like this is the beginning of Con Air all the way to the end.
Yeah, right.
Crimson Tide's kind of the same way, but yeah, it's very much a cable kind. I guess we'll get into that like because we're in the 90s this season, and so probably that's kind of going to be a prevalent thing. Like a lot of these we grew up watching on cable. I mean, that's just kind of how you watch movies.
just looking at the next couple weeks after that, I mean, a big reason why I know so much about a lot of these movies is because they were just on cable all the time. I was the family too. I was the one that everybody was jealous of because my parents, part of the reason I love movies so much, my parents, big movie fans, and we always had HBO, Showtime, Cinemax, all the full cable package. We had everything. And so I was always there was always something to watch when I was a kid. So yeah, just all these movies. Um, that's how and then I would see a movie, I'd like it, and then if I saw it on again, I'd just flip it on and then do whatever. So yeah, so Con Air versus Crimson Tide next week should be a good one. And I think that's all we have. Follow us on socials at Duel of the Greats everywhere except for TikTok, which is at Duel Podcast. And if you would like to email us, tell us a story, tell us how much you disagree with our decisions, etc., please feel free to do so. duelofthegreats@gmail.com. We'll read your email on air and react accordingly. So again, if you want to reach us, any of those is going to be the way to do it. But until then, we will see you next week. All right.